Friends, if you're excited to watch the blockbuster series The Last of Us 2023 in English, then make sure to like this video because you're in for an epic ride. And if you're visiting our channel for the very first time, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on detailed reviews, updates, and entertainment-packed videos like this one. Today's video is going to be all about The Last of Us, a series that took the world by storm with its gripping story, emotional depth, and stunning production quality. In this video, we'll dive deep into everything you need to know about The Last of Us. First, we'll talk about what this series actually is and why it became such a massive hit worldwide. Is it just another post-apocalyptic survival drama? Absolutely not. This series stands out for its intense storytelling, unforgettable characters, and the perfect balance of action, emotion, and suspense. I'll also tell you exactly where you can watch this series, whether it's streaming on an OTT platform or being aired on a satellite channel. You'll get all the latest and most accurate information, so you don't have to search around. We'll also break down all the interesting facts behind the making of this series. From the earliest stages of pre-production to the final touches in post-production, I'll walk you through the entire journey. You'll learn about the challenges the creators faced while adapting this story from a hugely popular video game and how they managed to bring such a rich and immersive world to life on screen. We'll discuss the filming locations, the budget that went into creating those intense action sequences and dramatic moments, and even take a look at how the series performed in terms of viewership and popularity. Of course, we'll also talk about the story itself. I'll give you a spoiler-free summary to get you intrigued, followed by a short review to share my thoughts on the overall plot, pacing, and emotional weight of the series. We'll explore the main themes of survival, human connection, and the moral choices that define the characters. And speaking of characters, we'll take a close look at the star cast of The Last of Us, who played the iconic roles of Joel and Ellie. How well did they perform? What other actors stood out with their performances? And which characters made the biggest impact? We'll go over every major and supporting role, analyzing how each actor contributed to the overall success of the series. Not only that, but we'll also talk about the technical departments, like direction, cinematography, visual effects, and music. You'll get to know about the creative minds behind the camera who shaped the atmosphere and tone of the series so brilliantly. Whether it's the haunting soundtrack, the raw and realistic visuals, or the way emotions are captured on screen, everything will be covered in detail. So friends, I highly recommend that you watch this video till the end because there's a lot of exciting stuff you won't want to miss. Whether you're a fan of the game, someone who loves thrilling stories, or just looking for your next binge-worthy series, this video will give you everything you need to know about The Last of Us 2023. So let's get started. Alright friends, buckle up because now we're diving deep into the story of The Last of Us 2023. And let me tell you, this is not your average post-apocalyptic adventure. This is a series that doesn't just walk you through a crumbling world. It makes you feel every cracked sidewalk, every painful goodbye, every moment of silence that says more than words ever could. This isn't a linear journey from disaster to salvation. No, it's an emotional maze filled with dead ends, detours, and gut-wrenching surprises that hit harder than any monster ever could. The series opens with what seems like a calm, normal day. Joel is just a regular dad, living with his daughter Sarah in Austin, Texas. We get these cozy, warm glimpses of their life. Teasing, breakfast, birthday gifts, and then, without warning, the cracks begin to show. News reports hint at unrest. Sirens start wailing. Chaos erupts almost instantly. A parasitic fungus begins spreading through the population, turning people into violent, mindless hosts. But what's really terrifying is how real it all feels. The streets fill with screaming neighbors, the military blocks off roads, and Joel, Sarah, and his brother Tommy are suddenly fleeing for their lives. The tension is unbearable. And then, just when you think they might make it, boom. The moment that breaks everything. It's raw. It's brutal. It leaves a scar that defines Joel for the rest of the series. Then, just like that, 20 years pass. It's a bold jump, and it works. The world we return to is not in the middle of collapse. It has already collapsed. Civilization hasn't just fallen. It's been rebuilt in twisted, authoritarian fragments. Joel is older, hardened, and emotionally locked away behind a wall you can't even see over. He's not the hero. He's a smuggler, doing what it takes to survive in a world where hope is a rare and dangerous thing. Enter Ellie, a 14-year-old girl with no parents, no real connections, and one incredible secret: she's immune to the infection. When Joel is asked to escort her across the country to a rebel group called the Fireflies, it starts out as just another job. Get her to the drop point, take the reward, move on. Simple. But of course, nothing in The Last of Us is ever simple. Here's where the show really plays with structure and narrative style. This isn't just Joel and Ellie walking west and fighting monsters. This is a story told through memories, flashbacks, character episodes, and shifts in focus that constantly reshape how we see the world and the people in it. The show gives entire episodes to characters you might expect to be side notes. And instead, those characters steal the spotlight. Bill and Frank's story, for instance, is a completely standalone episode that feels like a short film, emotional, intimate, and heartbreakingly beautiful. It shows that even in a broken world, love still has a place. And then there's Ellie's past. We jump back to her time in a military training facility, her rebellious friendship with Riley, and the fateful night that led to her discovering her immunity. These episodes aren't just filler, they're emotional anchors. They explain why Ellie is the way she is, why she doesn't trust easily, why she's terrified of losing people, why she fights so hard to matter to someone. These flashbacks add weight to every look, every decision, every moment she shares with Joel. The relationship between Joel and Ellie is the beating heart of the series. It's slow-burning and full of tension. Joel doesn't want to care. Ellie just wants someone to see her, to believe in her. And the beauty is that their bond doesn't come from big, dramatic speeches. It comes from tiny, human moments. Reading puns together, talking about astronauts, arguing over maps, watching them learn to trust, to rely on each other, is as compelling as any shootout or chase scene. But don't get too comfortable, because this show does not pull punches. Every time you think you figured it out, it flips the script. One episode, they're helping a pair of brothers escape a city ruled by a ruthless militia. Another, they're caught in the snow, trying to survive while Ellie takes charge when Joel is gravely injured. These aren't just action beats, they're emotional crucibles that forge the characters into something new. And then there's the finale. Oh, the finale. Without giving away spoilers, let's just say the story asks a very uncomfortable question. What would you sacrifice to save someone you love? The answer is messy. It's controversial. It's real. It challenges everything you think you know about Joel, about Ellie, and about what it means to be human in a world that constantly demands you choose between survival and morality. One of the most fascinating things about The Last of Us is how it refuses to follow a predictable path. The story doesn't march forward in a straight line. It zigzags through timelines, lingers in moments of silence, and sometimes pauses entirely to let a side character's life unfold. And every time you think, wait, why are we seeing this? And then it hits you. It's all connected. These moments, these people, these memories, they're the emotional bricks that build the foundation of Joel and Ellie's journey. Without them, the ending wouldn't land the same. Without them, the story would feel empty. Instead, it feels whole, complicated, real. So if you came here expecting a linear zombie drama, you're in for something much deeper, much more haunting. The Last of Us isn't just about what's out there, it's about what's inside. Inside Joel. Inside Ellie. Inside all of us when the world falls apart. And that's what makes this story unforgettable. Alright, now we're going deep into character territory, because if there's one thing The Last of Us absolutely nails, it's how it treats its characters like living, breathing human beings. This isn't a world of simple heroes and villains. This is a world where every choice costs something, where survival comes with scars, and where emotional transformation is often more explosive than any action scene. It's not just about who these people are when we meet them, it's about who they become, what they're hiding, what they're running from, and what finally catches up to them. So let's break it down and dive headfirst into the brilliant, brutal emotional playground of The Last of Us. Let's begin, of course, with Joel Miller, the man, the myth, the emotionally closed-off smuggler with a tragic past and a gruff voice that sounds like it's been soaked in sorrow. When we meet Joel, he's already lost everything, his daughter, his hope, any trace of softness. 20 years of surviving in a world ruled by death, betrayal, and infected monsters has turned him into a walking wall. He's numb. He doesn't get attached. He does what needs to be done, no matter how dirty or brutal. You look at Joel in episode 1 and think, this guy's been through it. But what's fascinating is how slowly and subtly that tough exterior begins to shift. Joel doesn't want to care about Ellie. At first, she's a job, a package, cargo. But Ellie, being Ellie, doesn't follow the script. She talks back. She makes jokes. She questions him. She pries. And she never lets him shut her out completely. As they journey across the country, Joel starts to feel something he's been running from since that horrible night 20 years ago, connection. His protective instincts kick in. His guard drops by degrees. And before he knows it, Ellie has gone from cargo to daughter. Not by blood, but by bond. And that shift, it's everything. It's not just about what Joel does for Ellie, it's about what Ellie does to Joel. She cracks open a man who thought he was beyond saving. She gives him a reason to fight for something again, not just against the world. But it's not a clean or easy journey. Joel is haunted. He's afraid. And the deeper he falls into that father role, the more reckless he becomes. That's the beauty of his arc. It's both heartwarming and terrifying. Because love, in this world, is dangerous. And when Joel finally makes the big choice in the finale, one of the most controversial decisions in modern storytelling, you completely understand why. You may not agree with it, but emotionally, it makes perfect sense. That's masterful writing. Now, on to Ellie, the spark in the dark. At 14, she's already seen more horror than most adults. She grew up in a crumbling world, raised in a militarized school, taught to obey but born to rebel. When we meet her, she's sarcastic, sharp, and stubborn. But it's not just teenage attitude, it's armor. Ellie has learned to protect herself by never showing too much. She jokes to deflect pain. She challenges people before they can hurt her. And beneath all that toughness is a girl who is desperate for connection, for someone to stay, for someone who won't leave like everyone else in her life has. Her relationship with Joel is slow and uneven. She pushes, he resists. She gets close, he pulls away. But every shared moment, whether they're fighting off infected or arguing over trust, adds another layer to her character. Ellie isn't just tagging along. She's learning. She's changing. She's growing into someone who refuses to be a victim, who demands to matter, who believes that her immunity could mean something in a world where so little still does. And then there's her past. The episode that dives into her friendship with Riley is so much more than backstory. It's a window into Ellie's heart. Her joy, her pain, her loss. The night with Riley, the arcade, the dancing, the bite, the silence, is quietly devastating. It shows us that Ellie's greatest fear isn't death. It's being alone. That fear drives so much of what she does, and why she clings to Joel, even when he tries to push her away. But let's not stop with the main duo. One of the most amazing things about The Last of Us is how it makes even minor or side characters feel complete. Tess, Joel's partner in smuggling, only appears in the early episodes, but her impact is massive. She's tough, smart, and believes in a better world, at least more than Joel does. Her final stand is one of those moments where you realize just how many sacrifices are made in silence, and how courage looks different in different people. Then we get to Bill and Frank, a full episode dedicated to two characters who, in any other show, would have been background extras. Instead, they get a decade-spanning love story that is tender, funny, heartbreaking, and unexpectedly hopeful. Bill starts as a grumpy, paranoid survivor. Frank is his opposite, warm, artistic, and open-hearted. Watching them grow old together in their self-made bubble is beautiful in a way that defies the genre. And when their story ends, it's not with violence or horror, it's with peace. With a choice. With love. Their story doesn't just enrich the world, it redefines it. It reminds us that even in a collapsed civilization, beauty and meaning can still exist. Then you've got Henry and Sam, two brothers just trying to survive. Henry's devotion to his little brother mirrors Joel's connection to Ellie, but their story ends in tragedy, a mirror held up to what Joel fears the most. Their arc is short but devastating, and it punches you right in the heart. And just like that, they're gone. But their memory lingers, not just in the audience's mind, but in Ellie's growing understanding of how fragile everything is. Even the antagonists aren't simple. Kathleen, the rebel leader in Kansas City, isn't just a tyrant. She's a grieving sister, someone who let vengeance consume her. Her downfall isn't satisfying, it's tragic. Because in another life, she could have been on the other side. That's what this show constantly reminds you. The line between hero and villain is paper thin. And then there's David, charming on the outside, monstrous within. His twisted version of community, his manipulation, his predator instincts, they all push Ellie to her absolute limit. And when she finally breaks free, it's not just survival. It's transformation. It's Ellie realizing that no one is coming to save her. She has to do it. And the trauma of that moment, it sticks. You can see it in her eyes. She doesn't come out the same. So no, these aren't just characters. These are people. People who bleed, who grieve, who grow, who change, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. The relationships they build are messy and beautiful, and rooted in the desperation to matter to someone. Joel becomes a father again. Ellie becomes a survivor who still holds on to hope. And together, they become a family forged in fire. The character development in The Last of Us isn't there to fill time. It's the engine of a story. The world might be broken, the infected might be everywhere, but it's these messy, complicated, unforgettable people that make it all matter. And by the time the credits roll, you're not just watching a story. You're mourning it, celebrating it, carrying it with you. Because these characters, they stay with you, long after the journey ends. Let's take the idea of great performances and supercharge it, because what happens in The Last of Us isn't just good acting in the traditional sense. It's a full-scale emotional demolition crew disguised as a cast. These actors don't perform scenes, they detonate them. They peel back layers, tug at nerves, and stare directly into the eyes of trauma, love, grief, and survival with such fearless intensity that you stop seeing actors entirely. You see people. You see souls. And once you've seen what they bring to the story, you can't unsee it. It sticks with you like a memory. Sharp, raw, unforgettable. Let's start with Pedro Pascal again, because honestly, there's no moving forward without giving this man all his flowers. His portrayal of Joel isn't just nuanced, it's volcanic. On the surface, he's all gravel and gruff, the kind of man who can snap a man's neck without blinking. But underneath that toughened, brutalized exterior is a broken heart desperately trying not to feel again. Pascal carries that duality in everything he does. The way his eyes flicker when Ellie reminds him of his daughter. The way he fights against softness like it's a threat. The way he sometimes says more with silence than most characters say with monologues. There are moments, tiny, quiet moments, when Joel lets his guard down, when he shows the kind of fragile love that terrifies him. And when Pascal gives us that glimpse, you feel it. It's the emotional equivalent of an aftershock. Subtle, but it leaves you rattled. And then there's Bella Ramsey, who doesn't just play Ellie, they are Ellie. From moment one, Ramsey understands the assignment and redefines it entirely. This isn't a one-note, plucky survivor girl performance. This is a deep dive into a soul forged in abandonment, violence, and aching, relentless hope. Ellie is funny, bitingly so. But that humor is a defense mechanism, and Ramsey delivers it like someone who has to keep laughing because crying is too dangerous. But when the cracks start to show, when Ellie breaks, whether from fear, rage, guilt, or the unbearable need to protect someone, Ramsey pours it all out. Their eyes do an Olympic-level amount of acting. Every scene is a battleground of conflicting emotions, and Ramsey navigates them like a pro. It's not just great for a young actor. It's great, period. Watching their performance is like watching a storm, thrilling, unpredictable, and sometimes utterly devastating. But don't think this emotional masterclass ends with the leads. No way. The supporting cast in The Last of Us is a rotating ensemble of scene stealers. Anna Torv, as Tess, may only get a few episodes, but she makes them count. There's a weariness in her voice, a knowing heaviness in her eyes, that tells you she's seen things she'll never unsee. Torv gives Tess a deep, almost desperate sense of purpose. She believes in something, maybe not in Joel, maybe not in hope, but in doing something that matters. Her exit is tragic, but it's also one of the most heroic, gut-punching sequences in the show, and Torv owns it with grace and fire. Then there's the episode that left millions sobbing into their pillows, the story of Bill and Frank, played to absolute perfection by Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett. Offerman, who's best known for playing the stoic and hilarious Ron Swanson, delivers a performance here that is gentle, layered, and quietly heartbreaking. Bill could have been a caricature, a grumpy loner with guns and traps, but Offerman makes him deeply human. You see his walls, you see his fears, and when love creeps in through the cracks, you see him soften in ways that feel so real it hurts. Bartlett's Frank, meanwhile, is the emotional counterweight, optimistic, charming, unafraid to challenge Bill's isolation. Their chemistry is off the charts, and their story doesn't just stand out, it soars. It's one of the most tender and unexpectedly hopeful portrayals of love in any post-apocalyptic setting ever. It turns what could have been a throwaway side plot into a miniature epic of its own. And when it ends, peacefully on their own terms, it hits like a symphony's final, perfect note. Storm Reed, as Riley, makes her single-episode appearance feel like a full-blown love, story, and tragedy in one. She and Bella Ramsey have chemistry that feels lived in, like two people who've spent years daring each other to laugh, hide pain, and cling to joy wherever they can find it. Their scenes in the mall aren't just flashbacks, they're echoes of Ellie's soul, and replays Riley with such radiant defiance that you can't help but fall for her, just like Ellie does. And how about Lamar Johnson and Kevin Montreal Woodard as Henry and Sam? These two don't just make you care, they wreck you. Johnson plays Henry like a man holding his breath every second, terrified of losing what little he has left in this crumbling world. His love for Sam is palpable, fierce, and devastating. Woodard, who is deaf in real life, brings a haunting expressiveness to Sam that words could never match. He signs, he draws, he watches, he feels, and every look he gives is loaded with innocence and quiet fear. Their story arc is brief, but their impact lasts long after their final scene, a heart-shattering reminder of how easily light can be extinguished in this world. And yes, let's take a moment for Melanie Lynskey as Kathleen, a villain who doesn't look like your typical villain at all. Soft-spoken, sweet-faced, and terrifying in her absolute conviction. Lynskey plays Kathleen as a woman consumed by vengeance, a woman who has reasons for her cruelty, even if they're twisted. That's the genius of her performance. She makes you question what righteousness looks like in a world with no rules. You don't hate her because she's evil. You fear her because she's justified, in her mind anyway. That moral gray area is chilling, and Lynskey walks the line perfectly. And then there's Scott Shepherd, who as David gives us one of the most uncomfortable, skin-crawling performances in the entire series. At first glance, he seems reasonable, even kind. But the deeper you go, the more unhinged he becomes. Shepherd doesn't yell. He whispers. He manipulates. He uses menace with a soft voice and a twisted smile. His scenes with Ellie are some of the most tension-filled in the entire show, and he never overplays it. He lets the horror simmer beneath the surface until it boils over, and Ramsey matches him, beat for terrifying beat. Even Ashley Johnson, yes, the original voice of Ellie in the game, shows up in a surprise role that hits emotionally and symbolically. She plays Ellie's mother, and in just one short sequence, she reminds you where Ellie's strength and fight come from. It's a beautiful full-circle moment, and Johnson brings so much tenderness and urgency to the scene that it feels like a passing of a torch. So what you end up with isn't just a well-acted series. It's a full-blown performance clinic. From the leads to the cameos, every actor brings more than just lines and expressions. They bring life. They bring history. They bring soul. And it's that collective brilliance, that ensemble commitment to authenticity and emotion, that turns The Last of Us into something more than a show. It becomes an experience, one you feel, one you carry, one you'll remember not for the infected or the explosions, but for the faces, the voices, and the performances that refuse to let you look away. All right, let's take this deep dive into the direction of The Last of Us and turn it into the cinematic adventure it deserves to be, because what the directors accomplish here goes beyond television storytelling. This is a masterclass in emotional immersion, tonal precision, and narrative control that most big-budget films only dream of pulling off. If you thought The Last of Us was just a video game adaptation, think again. The direction in this series isn't just good, it's an emotional architecture designed to devastate you slowly and beautifully. At the helm of this beautifully orchestrated chaos are Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann, a creative duo with wildly different backgrounds, Mazin being known for Chernobyl and Druckmann being the co-creator of the Last of Us video game. What they've done together here is something rare. They've fused the raw emotion and pacing of prestige TV with the immersive, character-driven tension of an interactive video game. And they did it without letting one compromise the other. That balance is tricky. You can't just transplant cutscenes into a TV show and expect it to work. You have to reshape the DNA of a story while preserving its soul, and that's exactly what the direction pulls off. Right from the pilot episode, you feel the direction asserting its voice. That prologue, you know the one. Sarah's perspective, the slow unraveling of normal life, the subtle signs that something is deeply wrong before the full outbreak kicks in. It's shot with such restraint and naturalism that it feels less like fiction and more like something you live through. The way the camera lingers in hallways, the ambient sound of distant sirens, the complete lack of a score for long stretches, it builds unease without telling you to be scared. It lets you discover fear in real time, and that's where the brilliance begins. As the episodes progress, the directorial mood becomes a kind of silent narrator. You don't always need words to know what a character is thinking or what a scene is trying to say, because the composition, lighting, and pacing are doing the talking. For example, notice how the infected aren't treated like main characters. You don't see them every 5 minutes. Instead, their presence is a kind of lingering shadow, always implied, always possible. The direction knows that suspense is often scarier than action, and it stretches that tension like a taut wire until you're practically begging for something, anything to break it. But even when the infected do appear, the camera doesn't resort to chaos. The directors shoot action in a way that feels almost documentary-like, messy, terrifying, and uncomfortably real. One of the most exciting things the directors do is take stylistic risks that you rarely see in game-to-screen adaptations. They don't just follow the game's lead, they reinterpret it through a cinematic lens. Take the standalone episodes, like the Bill and Frank chapter. It's nearly an hour-long meditation on love, loss, and survival that almost entirely departs from the game's original storyline. Most shows would never risk breaking from the main characters for that long, especially early in the season. But here, it becomes one of the most emotionally resonant episodes in the series. Why? Because the direction trusts the emotion more than the plot. It leans into stillness, into long takes and subtle performances, and it gives two side characters the full weight of a Shakespearean romance. That's not filler, that's vision. Then there's the Left Behind episode, where Ellie and Riley explore an abandoned mall together. It's practically a two-person play, with zombies somewhere off-screen. The direction here is electric. Arcade lights reflecting off faces, security shutters framing them like prison bars, a carousel spinning while time slips away. It's a teenage love story built inside the ruins of a world, and the camera moves through it with elegance and melancholy. Every wide shot feels like a postcard from a civilization long gone. Every close-up pulses with teenage awkwardness and longing. The directors don't rush it, they let it ache. That kind of patience is rare. What's also remarkable is the way the directors choreograph the emotional geography of scenes. That means where characters are placed, how far apart they stand, how much physical space the camera gives them. Look closely and you'll notice. When Joel and Ellie are emotionally distant, the camera is too. Wide shots, over-the-shoulder views, long silences. But as they grow closer, the direction shifts. Suddenly you're getting intimate two-shots, tighter framing, longer reaction takes. You see their bond forming in the way they're filmed. That's not accidental. That's the direction quietly telling you they need each other now. And you need them too. Another standout element is how violence is handled. It's not stylized. It's not fun. It's horrifying. The directors make sure you feel every consequence. When Joel fights or kills, it's not heroic, it's desperate. Brutal. And the camera doesn't glorify it. It bears witness. This is especially true in the penultimate episodes, when Joel's choices begin to walk the line between survival and something darker. The direction leans into moral ambiguity with tight, cold framing and eerie sound design. You're not told how to feel. You're made to wrestle with how you feel. And how about that final episode? It's a masterstroke of directorial tension. A father figure desperate to protect the only thing that gives his life meaning, a hospital lit like a sterile nightmare, and the softest acoustic guitar score playing beneath unspeakable acts. The directors frame this climax not like a hero's journey, but like a tragedy. The camera lingers, just long enough on Joel's face to let you see the weight of his choice, but not long enough to give you clarity. That ambiguity is everything. It leaves you breathless. It leaves you arguing with yourself. And that's the power of great direction. It doesn't hand you emotions. It lets you earn them. Ultimately, the directing across The Last of Us isn't just functional, it's deeply empathetic. It's the kind of direction that listens to the silences between words, that gives characters time to suffer, heal, stumble, and transform. It's sensitive to the characters' wounds but unafraid to challenge them. It respects the source material without being chained to it. And it consistently chooses the human element over spectacle, the quiet moment over the loud one, the real over the easy. That's why, when you finish an episode of The Last of Us, you don't just feel entertained. You feel altered. And that's what direction at its very best can do. It doesn't just guide a story. It imprints it on your heart. Cinematography in The Last of Us is like a silent storyteller whispering secrets to you through every shadow, every flicker of light, every carefully chosen angle. It's not just about making things look pretty, it's about making you feel the world, its dangers, its quiet moments, its heartbreak, and even its rare bursts of hope. From the opening scenes to the very last frame, the camera work does so much heavy lifting, setting the tone and mood in ways dialogue alone never could. Let's talk about the camera angles first, because these are not your average, straight-on shots. The cinematography constantly plays with perspective to immerse you right into the character's shoes. Low angles make you feel the weight of the environment, like crumbling buildings looming over Joel and Ellie, swallowing them whole in this post-apocalyptic wilderness. There are also plenty of tight close-ups that linger on faces, the subtle twitch of an eye, a trembling lip, or a furrowed brow. Moments that reveal more about a character's inner turmoil than 1,000 words ever could. And then you get the long, wide shots that show the vastness of the abandoned cities overtaken by nature, emphasizing just how small and vulnerable the characters really are. Lighting is another hero of the cinematography. The show dances expertly between harsh daylight and eerie darkness. In broad daylight, the light is often washed out, almost bleached, suggesting a world drained of life and color. But it's never boring. There's a rawness and grit to the sunlight that makes the environment feel real, dusty, and weather-beaten. At night or in interior scenes, shadows swallow the screen, leaving you squinting to catch details. The cinematographers use this darkness not just to hide threats but to build suspense. You feel the unknown lurking just beyond the edge of the frame, making every glance around a pulse-pounding moment. Candles flicker, fires crackle, and tiny beams of light slice through dusty windows, creating a chiaroscuro effect that adds depth and texture to the scenes. One visually striking aspect is the use of color palettes that shift subtly depending on the episode or scene. The series never goes for bright, saturated hues. Instead, it opts for muted greens, browns, grays, earth tones that underscore the natural reclaiming of the world by flora and fauna. When a scene calls for it, like a flashback to happier times or a fleeting moment of joy, warmer tones creep in, bathing the characters in soft oranges or golden light, which makes those moments feel like precious memories locked in time. This careful control over color helps manipulate the mood and keeps you emotionally connected to the shifting narrative. Framing in The Last of Us often feels like it's holding a secret. Characters are frequently framed off-center, or partially obscured by foreground objects, branches, windows, fences, creating a sense of being watched or trapped. This framing technique isn't accidental. It makes you feel the paranoia and isolation that comes with living in a world where danger can come from anywhere. At times, the camera peers through broken glass or debris, adding layers to the frame that hint at broken lives and fractured realities. The directors and cinematographers are playing with composition like artists, and each frame feels carefully curated to heighten tension or underline emotion. One particularly memorable scene uses a long tracking shot that follows Ellie moving cautiously through a darkened building. The camera glides silently behind her, staying close enough to make you feel like a shadow yourself, part of the suspense. It's not just about watching, It's about experiencing her every breath, every step, every second of vulnerability. This kind of cinematography turns a simple exploration into a heart-pounding journey. The cinematography also embraces moments of breathtaking natural beauty amid the devastation. Shots of sunlight filtering through overgrown trees, water glistening on leaves, and wild animals roaming through deserted streets provide a stunning contrast to the grim human drama. These moments remind you that the world isn't just a wasteland, it's alive in its own way. The way these shots are composed and lit makes you pause and appreciate the eerie, haunting beauty of nature reclaiming its place. Another clever visual technique involves the use of reflections and mirrors, which appear throughout the series. These reflections aren't just pretty shots, they're symbolic, too, showing fractured identities or moments of self-reflection for characters like Joel and Ellie. Sometimes a character's face is partially obscured or doubled in a cracked mirror or window, visually representing their inner conflict or the masks they wear to survive. The cinematography also masterfully balances intimate character moments with expansive world-building. When Joel and Ellie share quiet conversations, the camera often switches to close, almost claustrophobic framing that forces you into their personal space, making their connection palpable. Conversely, when they're navigating the ruins of civilization, the shots pull back to vast panoramas that remind you how isolated and small they are in this sprawling, dangerous world. Sound and camera movements work hand in hand, too. The camera often moves with a slow, deliberate pace, tracking, panning, or lingering in ways that mirror the characters' cautious movements and the story's slow-burning tension. It's as if the camera itself is holding its breath, just waiting for the next shock or emotional reveal. In essence, the cinematography in The Last of Us is an unsung hero, a constant presence that shapes how you see and feel the story. It's not flashy for the sake of spectacle, but every shot is charged with purpose, whether it's to build dread, highlight tenderness, or paint a post-apocalyptic world that's terrifying yet strangely beautiful. Watching the series with an eye on the cinematography is like taking a guided tour through a hauntingly beautiful nightmare, where every frame pulls you deeper into a world you can't easily forget. Editing and pacing in The Last of Us are absolutely vital ingredients that give the show its unique pulse and emotional heartbeat. Imagine the editors as the unseen conductors of a complex orchestra, carefully controlling when the music swells and when it quiets down to a whisper. The way scenes flow into one another, how tension rises and falls, and how emotional moments are timed, all of this is meticulously crafted to make sure you're not just watching, but truly living the story alongside Joel, Ellie, and the world around them. Right from the very first moments, the editing makes it clear that this isn't your typical fast-paced, non-stop action show. Instead, it takes its time, drawing you in slowly, like a patient storyteller settling you into a dark room before unveiling the nightmare inside. You'll notice that scenes are often allowed to breathe, with long pauses, lingering shots, and moments where the camera almost dares you to look away. These pauses aren't filler, they're an invitation to feel the weight of the silence, the tension hanging thick in the air, or the fragile hope shimmering between the characters. That slower pace is critical because it lets the emotional stakes simmer. When Joel and Ellie are navigating the ruins of a broken America, the editing respects the space between their words and actions. It gives you time to catch the fleeting looks, the barely there smiles, the hesitation before a hard decision. This kind of pacing is rare and precious because it trusts the audience to feel what's happening, not just be told. The editors don't rush you through heartbreak or survival. Every moment counts, and they let that feeling settle deep. But don't get the wrong idea. When it's time for chaos, the editing switches gears with almost cinematic precision. Action scenes are cut sharply, with a quick rhythm that throws you headfirst into danger. These moments feel unpredictable and urgent because the editors don't linger too long. They hit you with sudden bursts of energy and then pull back just before you're overwhelmed. This creates a roller coaster of emotions, with your heart racing during the action and slowing during the quiet moments. The contrast between these rhythms is what makes the show so addictive. One of the coolest tricks the editors use is cross-cutting between scenes that might seem unrelated at first, but build tension as they collide. For example, you might see Joel struggling through a treacherous environment, then suddenly cut to Ellie somewhere else, or a flashback that reveals critical backstory. This weaving of timelines and perspectives keeps your brain actively engaged, piecing together the puzzle and anticipating how the storylines will intersect. The timing of these cuts is masterful. Just when you think a scene is about to settle, you're pulled away, leaving you hanging in suspense. The editing also knows exactly when to slow down for emotional impact. After a brutal confrontation or devastating loss, the cuts become softer, longer, and more contemplative. You might see a character's face in extreme close-up, a tear falling slowly, or a quiet, empty room. These moments give a story its emotional depth because they refuse to gloss over pain or trauma. Instead, they make you live it alongside the characters. It's editing that doesn't just shape the story, but shapes your heart as a viewer. Long takes and uninterrupted shots play a big role in how the show controls its pacing, too. These extended scenes are like holding your breath underwater with the characters. There's no cutting away, no relief, just raw, uninterrupted emotion or tension. Whether it's Joel and Ellie having a meaningful conversation or sneaking through a dangerous area, the camera's steady focus forces you to stay present in the moment. It's a bold choice that pays off by making scenes feel incredibly real and immersive. Time itself gets a playful treatment in the editing. Flashbacks or memories sometimes bleed seamlessly into the present, making it hard to tell where past ends and present begins. This fluidity keeps the narrative fresh and unpredictable, and it reflects how memory and trauma linger in the characters' minds. The editors create these transitions with such subtlety that you might not notice at first, but once you do, it adds layers to the storytelling. Tension is also ramped up through the editing's masterful use of small, seemingly insignificant details. The sound of a creaking floorboard, a dripping faucet, or a flickering light can be stretched out across several cuts, making these everyday noises feel like ticking time bombs. The pacing here stretches time almost to the breaking point, and you feel every second of anxiety as if you were hiding with the characters, waiting for disaster to strike. It's this kind of editing patience that makes the suspense so thick you can almost cut it with a knife. Transitions between scenes are handled with smooth artistry, too. Instead of abrupt cuts, the show often uses visual or audio bridges, like the sound of a door closing overlapping with the next scene, or a fade from one color palette to another, to gently guide you from one story beat to the next. This fluidity keeps the narrative from feeling choppy, even as the story jumps between different characters, locations, or time periods. One of the most impressive feats of the editing and pacing is how it balances the show's shifting tones. The Last of Us moves effortlessly between horror, drama, action, and tender moments, and the pacing adapts to each like a skilled chameleon. You might go from a heart-wrenching conversation to a pulse-pounding chase scene, and the editing makes sure the transitions don't jar or confuse you. Instead, you feel the emotional shifts as natural and earned. In sum, the editors have crafted a rhythm for The Last of Us that's as much about emotion as it is about plot. It's a living, breathing pulse that carries you through the highs and lows of the story, making every scene feel urgent, real, and deeply affecting. Whether slowing down to savor a fragile moment or speeding up to thrust you into danger, the editing and pacing never lose sight of what matters most, connecting you to the characters and their journey in the most powerful way possible. The soundtrack and score of The Last of Us serve as the emotional backbone of the entire series, quietly steering the viewer's feelings and enhancing every scene in ways that visuals and dialogue alone simply couldn't achieve. It's like a secret language spoken through melodies and sounds, one that taps directly into your instincts and memories without you even realizing it. The music doesn't just fill space, it shapes the very atmosphere of the post-apocalyptic world, making it feel alive, raw, and achingly real. You might not always notice the music consciously, but it's always working in the background, coloring your experience, and pulling your emotions in exactly the right direction. One of the most impressive qualities of a score is how it uses recurring motifs, those subtle, repeating musical themes tied to specific characters, places, or emotions. These motifs act like emotional signposts throughout the series. For example, a delicate, wistful guitar melody might play whenever Ellie's youthful innocence and hope shine through the bleakness. It's a musical reminder that beneath the harsh exterior of this devastated world, there's still something fragile and precious worth fighting for. Conversely, darker, More discordant themes surface during moments of threat or loss, making your skin crawl and setting your nerves on edge even before the screen shows you what's coming. These recurring musical threads create a deep sense of cohesion in the story, tying together different episodes and emotional arcs in a way that feels seamless and intentional. But what really elevates the soundtrack is the way it balances sound and silence. The absence of music is just as powerful as its presence here. In tense or dangerous scenes, the score often retreats entirely, leaving the room filled only with the natural sounds of the environment, the crackling of fire, the rustling of leaves, distant footsteps, or a faint groan from lurking infected. This silence isn't empty. It's thick with suspense and dread, forcing you to lean in, listen closely, and imagine what might be lurking just out of sight. When the music does return after these silent stretches, even a single haunting note or a gentle strum on the guitar feels like an emotional thunderclap. It's this clever use of silence as a storytelling tool that makes the soundtrack feel alive and unpredictable. The instrumentation chosen for the score perfectly complements the world of The Last of Us. Rather than grand orchestras or heavy synths, the music leans on minimalist, acoustic sounds, soft guitars, pianos, and strings that feel intimate and human. This simplicity makes the music feel deeply personal, as if it's emerging directly from the characters' inner lives rather than an external soundtrack imposed on the story. It's like hearing a song from Joel's old guitar or the faint echoes of Ellie's memories, which adds a layer of authenticity and emotional depth that more bombastic music couldn't deliver. The rawness of the instruments mirrors the rawness of the character's journey, scarred, vulnerable, and often painfully beautiful. Certain tracks become unforgettable moments in the series, standing out as musical highlights that define key emotional beats. These pieces don't just accompany the story, they amplify it. Whether it's a haunting melody underscoring a heartbreaking farewell, a gentle lullaby that brings fleeting comfort, or a tense, rhythmic pulse driving a suspenseful chase, the music grabs your attention and won't let go. These standout compositions are carefully crafted to linger in your mind long after the episode ends, echoing the themes of loss, hope, and survival that dominate the show. The soundtrack also demonstrates a remarkable ability to adapt fluidly to the shifting moods and pacing of the series. During high-energy or chaotic sequences, the music intensifies, propelling the action forward without drowning out the natural sounds or dialogue. In quieter, more reflective moments, the score pulls back, wrapping the scene in a warm, subtle embrace that invites you to connect with the character's emotions. This flexibility ensures the music never feels intrusive or manipulative, but instead acts as a faithful companion to the storytelling, enhancing your emotional engagement without overwhelming the narrative. What's fascinating is how the soundtrack mirrors the duality of the world in The Last of Us. The music embodies the tension between destruction and beauty, despair and resilience. On one hand, you'll hear mournful, haunting melodies that echo the sense of loss and devastation pervading the ruined landscapes. On the other, gentle, hopeful themes remind you that even amid the ashes, moments of kindness, connection, and humanity still exist. This musical duality reinforces the show's core message that life continues to find a way, even in the darkest times. The score doesn't just sit separately from the world either, it often blends creatively with the environmental sound design. You'll notice natural sounds like wind, birdsong, or the distant rumble of thunder carefully layered with musical elements, blurring the line between score and soundscape. This fusion creates an immersive auditory experience that makes the world feel more real and lived in, drawing you deeper into the story's emotional fabric. Moreover, the soundtrack supports the narrative's emotional pacing by heightening subtle feelings that might otherwise go unnoticed. A single sustained note might underscore a character's quiet resolve, a brief melodic phrase might hint at unresolved trauma, or a recurring rhythm might reflect a character's steady determination to survive. These nuanced uses of music enrich the storytelling, giving it layers of meaning beneath the surface. In moments where dialogue and action pause, the music steps forward to fill the emotional space. It's in these quiet intervals where the score truly shines, guiding you through feelings of loneliness, fear, hope, and sorrow. The soundtrack becomes a voice for what the characters can't say, expressing their deepest fears and dreams through melody alone. To sum it up, The soundtrack and score of The Last of Us are more than just background music, they are an essential part of the storytelling magic. They shape the show's emotional landscape, heighten tension, deepen character moments, and immerse you in a world that feels both devastating and strangely beautiful. Every note, every silence, every recurring theme works together to pull you closer into the story, making the experience unforgettable long after the credits roll. The Last of Us isn't just your typical post-apocalyptic survival story. It's a rich tapestry woven with deep, thought-provoking themes that explore the human condition in a way few shows dare to. Beneath the surface of infected creatures and ruined cities lies a profound meditation on what it means to be human when everything familiar has been stripped away. This series invites viewers to look past the chaos and destruction and dive into complex ideas about love, loss, morality, survival, and the nature of connection. One of the most central themes running through the show is the nature of survival, but it's survival with a twist. It's not just about staying alive physically by dodging infected or scavenging for food, it's about the emotional and moral cost of survival. The characters are constantly forced to make gut-wrenching decisions. Who to trust, what to sacrifice, and how much of themselves they're willing to lose in the process. Joel and Ellie's journey shines a spotlight on the harsh realities of survival, showing us that the line between right and wrong can blur when life is on the line. This isn't a world of clear-cut heroes and villains. It's messy, complicated, and often heartbreaking. The series doesn't shy away from these moral quandaries. It leans into them, making you ask yourself what you might do if you were in their shoes. The questions raised about the price of survival linger long after the screen fades to black. Closely tied to survival is the theme of parenthood and protection, which is explored with an emotional depth that hits straight to the heart. Joel's relationship with Ellie is not just about companionship, it's a raw, powerful depiction of surrogate parenthood in the most brutal of circumstances. Joel's protective instincts clash with his own haunted past and flawed nature, while Ellie embodies both innocence and resilience. Their bond reflects the primal human need to nurture and protect, even when the world seems determined to destroy everything you care about. This relationship becomes a poignant exploration of love's complexities, how it can heal but also complicate, how it can motivate and sometimes blind us. Watching these two characters grow together gives the story a warm emotional core amid the bleakness. Another theme that weaves throughout the series is hope and resilience. Despite the desolation and the constant threat of death, The Last of Us finds moments of tenderness and humanity that shine like fragile lights in the darkness. Ellie especially embodies this theme. Her hope for a better future and her stubborn refusal to give up serve as a counterpoint to the despair around her. But this hope is not naive or simplistic. It's gritty and earned, built through hardship and loss. The show reminds us that even when the world is crumbling, the human spirit's capacity to endure and strive for connection remains strong. This theme resonates deeply because it's a realistic, hard-won hope rather than an idealistic fantasy. Identity and transformation are also front and center in the story's thematic web. Both Joel and Ellie undergo significant changes shaped by trauma, love, and survival. Joel starts as a hardened, emotionally closed-off man, but his journey with Ellie peels back his layers, revealing vulnerability and tenderness beneath the tough exterior. Ellie, on the other hand, faces the loss of innocence as she's forced to confront a brutal reality. The series captures these shifts with nuance, showing that identity is fluid and shaped by experiences, especially extreme ones. This theme adds rich complexity to the characters, making them feel like real people who grow and change, rather than static archetypes. The show also thrives on exploring the moral ambiguity of its world. It refuses to hand the audience easy answers about good and evil, right and wrong. Instead, it presents a landscape where survival often requires choices that blur ethical lines. Sometimes people have to do terrible things to protect themselves or those they love. The consequences of these choices ripple through the story, often with painful or tragic outcomes. This moral grayness makes the narrative compelling because it challenges viewers to think critically about human nature and the cost of survival. It's not about clear-cut villains. It's about flawed people trying to navigate impossible situations. Loss and grief are themes that permeate the series on almost every level. Characters carry the weight of their pasts, the people they've lost, the homes destroyed, the innocence shattered. The show doesn't gloss over these emotions but allows grief to breathe, showing how it shapes characters' motivations and relationships. It's this honest portrayal of sorrow and remembrance that grounds the story in emotional reality. You feel the pain alongside the characters, which deepens your connection to them. Trust and betrayal form another fascinating thematic layer. In a world where betrayal can mean death, trust becomes a precious but fragile commodity. Alliances shift constantly, and characters must navigate this treacherous social landscape, learning who to rely on and when to be cautious. Joel and Ellie's evolving trust in each other becomes a focal point, showing how trust can grow even in the harshest conditions but can also be broken with devastating consequences. This theme adds tension and emotional complexity, keeping viewers on edge while highlighting the importance of human connection. Perhaps one of the most profound themes is the exploration of humanity versus monstrosity. The infected are terrifying creatures, embodiments of a world gone wrong, but the series points out that humans are often capable of equal or greater cruelty. This blurring of lines raises questions about what really defines a monster. Is it the infected, or the choices humans make in desperate times? The show's philosophical inquiry into empathy, savagery, and the capacity for kindness challenges viewers to rethink their assumptions and look deeper into what makes us human. All of these themes are woven together with subtlety and care, never feeling forced or heavy-handed. Instead, they emerge naturally from the characters' struggles and the world they inhabit. The storytelling respects the audience's intelligence, inviting reflection and emotional engagement without preaching. This thoughtful thematic richness makes The Last of Us more than just a survival tale. It becomes a powerful exploration of life, love, and the complexities of humanity that sticks with you long after the credits roll. When it comes to the visual effects and CGI in The Last of Us, the show doesn't just rely on flashy, over-the-top digital spectacle. Instead, it carefully blends practical effects and CGI in a way that feels incredibly natural and immersive. This balance is what makes the post-apocalyptic world come alive so convincingly, pulling you deep into the environment without any jarring moments that break the illusion. You're not constantly aware that what you're seeing is the product of computers or makeup. Rather, it all feels like a tangible, gritty reality that you can almost reach out and touch. A major highlight is the way the infected creatures are brought to life. These monsters are one of the core visual challenges because they need to look terrifying and unnatural while still feeling like physical beings that exist in the world. The show nails this by leaning heavily on practical effects first, the kind of expert makeup, prosthetics, and animatronics that add real texture and detail to the infected. You see peeling, rotting skin, twitching muscles, veins pulsating, and other subtle grotesque details that make the creatures feel disturbingly real. When these practical elements are combined with the CGI enhancements, like the eerie jerky movements, unnatural distortions, or sudden aggressive lunges, the infected come alive in a way that's truly unsettling and spine-chilling. This mix ensures the monsters never slip into looking too artificial or cartoonish, maintaining that perfect balance between horror and believability. The environments in The Last of Us also benefit immensely from the thoughtful use of visual effects. The show portrays a world ravaged by time and nature's reclamation, with cities crumbling and plants overtaking concrete and steel. Here, CGI isn't used just for show. It's an essential tool for storytelling. The digital work adds layers of detail like vines creeping up building facades, rust on abandoned cars, broken glass glinting in sunlight, and other subtle touches that make the setting feel lived in and authentic. These digital effects are often understated, but that's their strength. They create a seamless backdrop that tells its own story about the passage of time, decay, and survival. You feel the weight of the world's collapse in every frame, partly because the CGI enhances the physical sets so carefully that the boundaries between real and digital dissolve. One of the smartest choices the show makes is its heavy reliance on practical effects alongside digital work. Practical effects, like real sets filled with debris, actual props weathered by time, makeup effects applied to actors, and even physical stunts, bring an undeniable sense of reality and weight to the scenes. When Joel or Ellie move through a crumbling building or brush against a ruined wall, the tactile nature of these practical elements grounds the story emotionally. This tactile reality makes every interaction feel immediate and visceral, which then allows the CGI elements to seamlessly blend in without overshadowing the human performances. For instance, when the infected suddenly burst through a wall or swarm a character, the practical effects establish a physical presence, while CGI adds movement and complexity, creating thrilling sequences that feel both believable and intense. Action scenes especially highlight this successful blend. Whether it's tense chases through abandoned streets or close-quarters confrontations with the infected, the show uses visual effects to enhance the drama without ever overdoing it. The infected move, with a combination of mechanical jerkiness and animalistic unpredictability that's achieved through digital animation layered onto real stunt work and makeup. The result is a perfect fusion where you feel the danger breathing down the characters' necks without ever being taken out of the moment by obvious digital fakery. Lighting plays a crucial role in how the visual effects feel integrated into the world. The VFX artists work closely with the cinematographers to match lighting and shadows precisely, so CGI elements catch the same highlights, reflections, and darkness as the real environment. This attention to detail means that a digital infected lurking in the shadows feels like a natural part of the scene, not a pasted-on addition. Whether it's the eerie glow of a street lamp flickering over ruined buildings, the cold blue light of a moonlit forest, or the harsh sunlight streaming into broken windows, the lighting enhances mood and tension while anchoring the digital effects in reality. There are also moments where the show pushes the envelope with digital effects to create scenes or creatures that would be impossible to do practically. These sequences never feel like pure CGI playgrounds but serve to heighten suspense, emotion, or world building. For example, wide shots of devastated cities or hordes of infected rushing across terrain are achieved with digital artistry that expands the scale without losing detail. This clever use of CGI extends the world's scope and helps maintain the show's immersive quality. Even in small, often unnoticed details, CGI contributes significantly. Things like the subtle decay on abandoned street signs, flickering electrical wires, or the movement of debris in the wind add layers of authenticity. These tiny touches enrich the environment and help create a consistent visual language for the show's world, a place that's been long forgotten by civilization but still tells a story through its textures and imperfections. In essence, the visual effects and CGI in The Last of Us are the perfect supporting players to the story and characters. They don't steal the spotlight, but instead amplify the atmosphere, tension, and emotional beats by making the world believable and immersive. The seamless dance between practical effects and digital enhancements showcases how technology can serve storytelling beautifully when used thoughtfully. Every monster, every ruined building, every shadowed corner feels alive and dangerous, pulling you into a post-apocalyptic reality that's as haunting as it is compelling. It's a masterclass in how to use visual effects not just for spectacle, but to deepen the audience's connection to the world and the story unfolding within it. When diving deeper into the dialogue and script of The Last of Us, what really grabs you is how effortlessly natural and engaging the conversations feel. The writing never falls into the trap of sounding rehearsed or artificial. Instead, it captures the imperfect rhythms of real speech. People stammer, interrupt, hesitate, and sometimes say more with what they don't say than with the words they do. This nuance brings a remarkable authenticity to the show, making it easy to believe these characters are genuinely grappling with the harsh realities of a post-apocalyptic world. The dialogue has this beautiful, gritty texture that's both raw and layered, allowing the audience to connect deeply with the characters on an emotional level. One of the most compelling things about the script is how it juggles tones so skillfully. You'll find moments of sharp wit and clever banter perfectly balanced with raw, emotional vulnerability. The characters often use humor as a shield to fend off the crushing weight of their situation, and the script doesn't shy away from that. These bursts of dry, sometimes dark humor create moments of relief that feel earned, never out of place, and always true to the characters. It's these quick, witty exchanges that help breathe life into scenes that might otherwise feel bleak or heavy, making the show more accessible and emotionally rich. The writing also knows when to dial things back and let silence or a single glance speak volumes. These moments where words are sparse are powerful, drawing the viewer in and inviting them to read between the lines. The pauses and unspoken thoughts carry a huge emotional charge and are expertly placed to heighten tension or deepen intimacy between characters. The way the script uses these silences feels incredibly sophisticated and respectful of the audience's intelligence, allowing you to feel the weight of what's happening beneath the surface without being spoon-fed. Memorable lines are sprinkled throughout the series, but they never feel forced or overly dramatic. Instead, they often emerge organically in moments where a character's personality shines through or when the stakes of a story hit home. These lines can be poignant, heartbreaking, or quietly profound, and they stick with you long after the episode ends. Some become defining catchphrases or emotional touchstones that encapsulate key themes of survival, loss, and hope. For instance, Joel's gruff pragmatism and Ellie's sharp sarcasm come alive in their dialogue, giving them distinct voices that make their relationship feel genuine and evolving. This contrast and interplay between their styles of speaking enrich the narrative, showing not just what they think, but how they relate to each other on a fundamental level. Another impressive aspect of the script is how well it captures the tension and uncertainty of a world where danger lurks around every corner. The dialogue isn't just about moving the plot forward, it's a battleground for trust, suspicion, and survival instincts. Characters often use words to protect themselves or others, test loyalties, or hide their fears. This creates an underlying current of unpredictability in conversations, making every exchange feel loaded and meaningful. Even mundane interactions crackle with an edge because, in this world, every word could have consequences. The dialogue also smartly weaves in world-building details without feeling like an info dump. Instead of characters spouting exposition, bits of history, social dynamics, and cultural shifts emerge naturally in conversation. This approach makes the universe feel alive and lived in, and it invites viewers to piece together the bigger picture gradually. This subtle integration enriches the viewing experience by making the environment feel as complex and layered as the characters themselves. Humor, while often dark or sarcastic, is a crucial part of the script's charm. It's a tool the characters use not only to cope but to connect, offering brief respites from the tension without undermining the stakes. The witty back and forth between Joel and Ellie, in particular, injects warmth and humanity into their journey. Their banter feels spontaneous and sincere, adding levity but also deepening their bond. The way the script balances humor with heartache is a testament to its strong writing, showing that even in the darkest times, moments of connection and laughter can shine through. Finally, the dialogue is packed with emotional weight. Characters reveal their fears, regrets, hopes, and regrets through what they say and how they say it, making the script a window into their souls. The writing explores themes of loss, redemption, trust, and resilience not through preachy speeches but through conversations that feel lived in and true. This emotional authenticity makes the story resonate on a profound level, pulling viewers into the characters' struggles and triumphs. All in all, the script and dialogue in The Last of Us offer a rich, textured, and deeply human experience. The writing captures the messy, painful, and sometimes funny realities of survival in a fractured world with a deft touch. It's dialogue that doesn't just tell a story but invites you into the characters' hearts and minds, making every word count and every exchange a piece of the larger emotional puzzle. This masterful use of language is a big part of why the series feels so compelling, memorable, and genuinely moving. If you thought The Last of Us was just another post-apocalyptic show with infected people chasing survivors through crumbling cities, think again. Yes, it exists within the framework of the survival horror genre. Yes, it gives you the tense encounters, the bleak landscapes, and the moments of heart-pounding dread you'd expect. But what makes it such a thrilling ride isn't just how it follows the genre, it's how it bends, twists, and reinvents it with subtle genius. This series understands its DNA, but refuses to be caged by it. It plays with convention like a cat plays with its prey, sometimes lovingly, sometimes cruelly, always with purpose. Let's start with the most obvious, the infected. You'd assume they'd be center stage in every episode, right? After all, that's what zombie-adjacent shows usually do. They throw hordes of infected at their characters to force action, to generate fear, to give the audience a jolt. But The Last of Us takes a refreshing detour from that formula. The infected are ever present, but they're not the whole show. They're a looming danger, a constant threat in the world, but the real focus is on how people react, adapt, and sometimes implode in the aftermath of societal collapse. The show isn't about monsters outside, it's about the monsters we carry within. That's a genre twist done with a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. What's even more intriguing is how the show doesn't throw you into endless, exhausting battles or predictable horror beats. There are entire stretches where not a single infected appears, and yet you're glued to the screen. Why? Because The Last of Us taps into a deeper kind of tension, one rooted in human vulnerability, in unspoken trauma, in ethical dilemmas that don't have clean answers. This psychological intensity makes the genre feel less like a haunted house ride and more like a mirror being slowly turned toward the viewer. You're not just watching people survive, you're constantly questioning what survival even means. Now, let's talk emotional complexity. This isn't a world where a gun-toting hero shows up and saves the day with a cool one-liner and a grenade. This is a world where characters cry, stumble, get it wrong, lose everything, and somehow keep going. And that's where The Last of Us refuses to be boxed into one genre lane. It's horror, yes, but it's also an intimate drama, a coming-of-age tale, a road movie, a philosophical exploration of loss, love, duty, and fate. It doesn't just dabble in multiple genres, it blends them into something deeply cohesive and emotionally resonant. Action scenes, when they come, are explosive but grounded. They aren't stylized ballets of violence. They're messy, frightening, desperate. This is where the genre execution really shines. It doesn't glamorize survival. It makes you feel the stakes. When someone pulls a trigger, the sound echoes long after, because it's not just a moment of adrenaline, it's a moral turning point. Violence has weight here. That's rare in a genre that often treats shootouts as entertainment. And then there's the humor. Oh yes, there's humor, and it's some of the driest, sharpest, most human humor you'll find in a show like this. The kind of humor that sneaks up on you in the middle of emotional devastation and makes you laugh through your tears. It's not forced. It's not there to undercut the drama. It's the kind of humor people use to cope with unspeakable pain. Ellie's puns, Joel's grunts of reluctant amusement. These moments give the story oxygen, keep the characters real, and remind you that even in a world gone to hell, people still find a reason to laugh. That balance of tone is difficult to master, but The Last of Us handles it with stunning finesse. One of the most genre-defying aspects of the show is its willingness to pause and tell quieter, isolated stories that still feel essential to the world. Take a single episode, and it might unfold like a love story, a family tragedy, or even a moral parable. These detours aren't filler, they're thematic expansions. They deepen the lore, show different angles of the same apocalypse, and challenge the audience to stop seeing the infected as the main threat. Often, the real horror comes from loneliness, betrayal, or misplaced trust. This reshaping of the genre's priorities is bold and refreshing. The show also avoids falling into the trap of making its characters invincible. In many survival stories, the protagonist somehow escapes every ambush, solves every problem, becomes the savior. But in The Last of Us, even the heroes bleed, break, and lose. They make choices that are questionable. They pay the price for their mistakes. The genre often paints the apocalypse as a place for brutal triumph, but here, it's more of a test of endurance. It's about holding on to your humanity when it would be easier to let go. In terms of world building, the series goes above and beyond. The ruins aren't just set dressing. They tell stories. The overgrown cities, the abandoned homes, the collapsed highways. Each one is a visual narrative of what used to be and what was lost. This kind of environmental storytelling is a hallmark of great genre execution, and it's done masterfully here. You don't need exposition when a broken children's toy, sitting untouched on a dusty shelf, says more than words ever could. So yes, The Last of Us lives comfortably in the genre of survival horror. But it doesn't just live there, it renovates the house, invites in new neighbors from drama, tragedy, even dark comedy, and throws out the tired tropes that no longer serve the story. It delivers the danger and despair fans of the genre crave, but infuses it with rare depth and emotional intelligence. It respects its genre roots while growing into something bigger, more beautiful, and infinitely more human. It reminds us that even in the apocalypse, storytelling can still surprise you, challenge you, and yes, absolutely devastate you. If you thought The Last of Us was just another post-apocalyptic show with infected people chasing survivors through crumbling cities, think again. Yes, it exists within the framework of the survival horror genre. Yes, it gives you the tense encounters, the bleak landscapes, and the moments of heart-pounding dread you'd expect. But what makes it such a thrilling ride isn't just how it follows the genre, it's how it bends, twists, and reinvents it with subtle genius. This series understands its DNA, but refuses to be caged by it. It plays with convention like a cat plays with its prey, sometimes lovingly, sometimes cruelly, always with purpose. Let's start with the most obvious, the infected. You'd assume they'd be center stage in every episode, right? After all, that's what zombie-adjacent shows usually do. They throw hordes of infected at their characters to force action, to generate fear, to give the audience a jolt. But The Last of Us takes a refreshing detour from that formula. The infected are ever present, but they're not the whole show. They're a looming danger, a constant threat in the world, but the real focus is on how people react, adapt, and sometimes implode in the aftermath of societal collapse. The show isn't about monsters outside, it's about the monsters we carry within. That's a genre twist done with a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. What's even more intriguing is how the show doesn't throw you into endless, exhausting battles or predictable horror beats. There are entire stretches where not a single infected appears, and yet you're glued to the screen. Why? Because The Last of Us taps into a deeper kind of tension, one rooted in human vulnerability, in unspoken trauma, in ethical dilemmas that don't have clean answers. This psychological intensity makes the genre feel less like a haunted house ride and more like a mirror being slowly turned toward the viewer. You're not just watching people survive, you're constantly questioning what survival even means. Now, let's talk emotional complexity. This isn't a world where a gun-toting hero shows up and saves the day with a cool one-liner and a grenade. This is a world where characters cry, stumble, get it wrong, lose everything, and somehow keep going. And that's where The Last of Us refuses to be boxed into one genre lane. It's horror, yes, but it's also an intimate drama, a coming-of-age tale, a road movie, a philosophical exploration of loss, love, duty, and fate. It doesn't just dabble in multiple genres, it blends them into something deeply cohesive and emotionally resonant. Action scenes, when they come, are explosive but grounded. They aren't stylized ballets of violence. They're messy, frightening, desperate. This is where the genre execution really shines. It doesn't glamorize survival. It makes you feel the stakes. When someone pulls a trigger, the sound echoes long after, because it's not just a moment of adrenaline, it's a moral turning point. Violence has weight here. That's rare in a genre that often treats shootouts as entertainment. And then there's the humor. Oh yes, there's humor, and it's some of the driest, sharpest, most human humor you'll find in a show like this. The kind of humor that sneaks up on you in the middle of emotional devastation and makes you laugh through your tears. It's not forced. It's not there to undercut the drama. It's the kind of humor people use to cope with unspeakable pain. Ellie's puns, Joel's grunts of reluctant amusement. These moments give the story oxygen, keep the characters real, and remind you that even in a world gone to hell, people still find a reason to laugh. That balance of tone is difficult to master, but The Last of Us handles it with stunning finesse. One of the most genre-defying aspects of the show is its willingness to pause and tell quieter, isolated stories that still feel essential to the world. Take a single episode, and it might unfold like a love story, a family tragedy, or even a moral parable. These detours aren't filler, they're thematic expansions. They deepen the lore, show different angles of the same apocalypse, and challenge the audience to stop seeing the infected as the main threat. Often, the real horror comes from loneliness, betrayal, or misplaced trust. This reshaping of the genre's priorities is bold and refreshing. The show also avoids falling into the trap of making its characters invincible. In many survival stories, the protagonist somehow escapes every ambush, solves every problem, becomes the savior. But in The Last of Us, even the heroes bleed, break, and lose. They make choices that are questionable. They pay the price for their mistakes. The genre often paints the apocalypse as a place for brutal triumph, but here, it's more of a test of endurance. It's about holding on to your humanity when it would be easier to let go. In terms of world building, the series goes above and beyond. The ruins aren't just set dressing. They tell stories. The overgrown cities, the abandoned homes, the collapsed highways. Each one is a visual narrative of what used to be and what was lost. This kind of environmental storytelling is a hallmark of great genre execution, and it's done masterfully here. You don't need exposition when a broken children's toy, sitting untouched on a dusty shelf, says more than words ever could. So yes, The Last of Us lives comfortably in the genre of survival horror. But it doesn't just live there, it renovates the house, invites in new neighbors from drama, tragedy, even dark comedy, and throws out the tired tropes that no longer serve the story. It delivers the danger and despair fans of the genre crave, but infuses it with rare depth and emotional intelligence. It respects its genre roots while growing into something bigger, more beautiful, and infinitely more human. It reminds us that even in the apocalypse, storytelling can still surprise you, challenge you, and yes, absolutely devastate you. Now we're diving deep into the beating heart of The Last of Us, the social and cultural commentary that elevates the series from just another post-apocalyptic thriller to a profound reflection of who we are, what we value, and how fragile our so-called civilization really is. On the surface, it's a story about fungus zombies and a grizzled smuggler transporting a teenager across a crumbling United States. But peel back the layers, and it becomes a bold, layered exploration of society's failings, our desperate need for connection, the politics of survival, and the humanity we risk losing in the name of protection. Let's start with the obvious, the outbreak. The cordyceps infection is a genius metaphor. It's not just a terrifying biological threat. It's nature reclaiming control, punishing humanity for its arrogance. The real horror isn't just the infected, it's how quickly the thin veneer of civilization collapses. Within days, governments fall, people turn on each other, and institutions we once trusted, healthcare, the military, the law, either disappear or become oppressive shadows of what they were. The show doesn't just say, here's what happens when the world ends. It says, here's how close we already are. And that message hits hard, especially in a post-pandemic era where we've all seen firsthand how fear, misinformation, and desperation can erode the very systems we rely on. But The Last of Us doesn't stop at systemic collapse. It zooms in and asks what happens to the individual. What happens to people when their moral compass is yanked away? When survival becomes a full-time job and hope is in short supply? Through Joel, we see the toll of grief, isolation, and hardened survival instincts. He isn't a hero in the traditional sense. He's a deeply damaged man, doing whatever it takes to protect what little he is left. And that whatever it takes isn't always noble. He lies. He kills. He betrays. But why he does those things, and how the world shaped him into someone capable of doing them is the point. He's a product of a broken system, and his journey is a case study in how trauma can both shield and imprison us. Then you have Ellie, who flips the script on the innocent child trope. She's foul-mouthed, stubborn, often violent, but she's also hopeful, curious, and deeply human. Her very existence forces the viewer to grapple with questions of agency and destiny. Is she humanity's savior? Should that responsibility be forced on her? The show never makes it easy. It forces you to sit in the discomfort of impossible choices, the kind societies have been making for centuries, sacrificing the few for the many, erasing the individual in the name of progress. What's truly special is how the series captures the politics of power. Whether it's Fedra's militaristic dictatorship, the Firefly's insurgency, or isolated communities, each with their own warped moral code, the show paints a bleak but truthful picture of how authority mutates in the vacuum of order. Power is abused. Fear becomes currency. Violence is normalized. These aren't far-fetched science fiction ideas. They're eerily similar to real-world systems of control, propaganda, and resistance. The show never simplifies these factions into good or evil. Instead, it shows how ideology, when pushed to extremes, can become just another prison. And we can't ignore the incredible nuance the show brings to representation, especially queer representation. The relationship between Bill and Frank isn't just a side plot. It's a masterclass in quiet, devastating storytelling that challenges norms and expectations. Their love story is tender, heartbreaking, and completely unflinching. It dares to say that love matters, even in the end times. That dignity and choice matter. That intimacy isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. It's these smaller, human stories that carry enormous cultural weight. They challenge outdated narratives about who gets to survive, who gets to be loved, and who gets to be seen. The show also dives into issues of gender and masculinity. Joel is tough, yes, but the show constantly challenges the idea that strength equals stoicism. He's haunted by loss, paralyzed by love, and his most human moments are his weakest ones. The performance subtly deconstructs the protector archetype, showing the emotional cost of being someone who always has to be strong. Ellie, meanwhile, is a complex portrayal of femininity that isn't confined by traditional boundaries. She's nurturing and fierce, vulnerable and vicious. She grows up in a world where survival leaves no room for daintiness, and she owns that space completely. Her journey is less about becoming strong and more about discovering what kind of strength really matters. And let's talk race. The casting choices in the series are deliberate and powerful, reflecting a world that's far more diverse than most genre fiction dares to portray. But beyond just visibility, the show subtly addresses the intersection of race and survival, how authority treats people of color, who gets a voice, and who gets erased. Characters like Henry and Sam aren't just there to tick boxes. They're fully realized, emotionally potent characters whose struggles reflect deeper systemic truths. Their story becomes a gut-wrenching mirror of lost innocence, brotherhood, and the cruel cost of living in a world that refuses to forgive weakness. Religion, too, is tackled with uncomfortable precision. The show doesn't bash faith, but it does examine what happens when belief becomes a weapon. Characters like David show us how religion can be used to justify monstrosity, how charisma can mask horror, and how people seek meaning in the face of chaos, even if it leads them down terrifying paths. It's not a condemnation of faith, it's a warning about blind devotion, and a question about what people are really searching for when they cling to something higher. And perhaps the most haunting commentary of all is the one on love itself. The Last of Us asks again and again, is love a saving grace or a destructive force? Does it bind us together or break us apart? Joel's love for Ellie leads him to make a devastating choice, one that flips the idea of heroism on its head. In a world without rules, love becomes the most dangerous weapon of all. It can justify anything. It can destroy everything. And it's that moral complexity, that emotional messiness, that lingers long after the credits roll. So yes, The Last of Us is about monsters. But not the ones with fungal heads and snapping jaws. It's about the monsters inside us, the ones born from fear, grief, love, and desperation. It's a cautionary tale, a mirror, a confession, and a challenge all wrapped into one. And that's what makes its social and cultural commentary not just powerful, but unforgettable. If The Last of Us had a secret weapon beyond its zombies and apocalyptic grit, it would be its uncanny ability to grab the audience by the heart and never let go. Audience engagement isn't just a byproduct of this show, it's a carefully crafted mission. From the moment the screen fades in, there's a pulse of tension that sets the tone. And once it has you, the show doesn't just keep you watching. It consumes you. You're not sitting on the couch anymore. You're walking through the ruins with Joel and Ellie. You're feeling their fears, their doubts, their flickers of hope. And most importantly, you're questioning everything alongside them. It's not a passive experience. It's a full-body, emotional plunge into a crumbling world that somehow feels too real. The emotional resonance in this series is practically weaponized. It doesn't rely on cheap shocks or easy sentimentality. It builds and earns every single reaction. When Joel opens up about his past, it's not just exposition, it's confession. When Ellie tells a joke from her pun book in the middle of danger, it doesn't break tension, it redefines it. These moments are stitched together so naturally, they feel like lived memories. There are no throwaway lines, no filler scenes. Every moment has weight. Every exchange is loaded with subtext. That's why audiences don't just watch, they invest, they react, they remember. And the range of reactions is staggering. You'll laugh out loud when Ellie drops a snarky one-liner. You'll cry, sometimes unexpectedly, at the quietest of scenes. You'll feel actual fear when the infected appear, not just because they're scary, but because by now, you know what's at stake emotionally. When the characters are in danger, you care because they're more than characters, they're people you know. And when something tragic happens, it's like losing a friend. That's the level of connection this show builds. But here's the brilliant part. the engagement doesn't stop when the credits roll. This is the kind of show that lives on in conversations long after the episode ends. People take sides on Joel's choices. They debate morality, survival, and what it means to protect someone at all costs. It sparks Reddit threads, YouTube essays, podcasts, and late-night discussions with friends. It invites you to revisit key episodes, to reevaluate character arcs, to see if you missed something important, and you always did, because the show is built with layers. There's always something new to feel, something deeper to interpret. It's sticky, in the best way possible. It also invites empathy on an almost uncomfortable level. You start imagining yourself in Joel's shoes. Could you do what he did? Would you be able to make the same decisions? Or would you fall apart? And Ellie, so fierce and vulnerable all at once, makes you think about the weight of growing up in a world that's constantly breaking. You can't help but put yourself in their place, and that's the hook. That's the magic. It's not just about what's happening on screen. It's about what's happening to you while you watch it. And let's not forget the rewatch value. Oh, the rewatch value. Every revisit brings a new realization, a deeper understanding. Suddenly, a glance in episode 2 foreshadows an emotional implosion in episode 7. A passing comment in the background now feels like a gut punch because you know what it leads to. The storytelling is so carefully layered that the second watch becomes an entirely new experience. And the third? Even more rewarding. Each time, you're emotionally re-immersed, but with more context, more depth, more appreciation. The Last of Us doesn't just tell you a story. It hands you a mirror. It forces you to feel, to question, to empathize. That's why audiences don't just engage, they bond with it. They get invested on a human level. And when that happens, when a piece of storytelling transcends its medium and becomes personal, you know you're not just watching a show. You're experiencing a phenomenon. If we really open the floodgates and let this comparison run wild, The Last of Us doesn't just edge out its peers, it smashes them into the dirt with quiet intensity and a profound sense of purpose. It's like looking at a gallery wall filled with familiar post-apocalyptic art, and suddenly one piece just pulls you in, not because it's louder or bloodier, but because it's honest. You don't just observe The Last of Us, you live in it. You feel the mud under your feet, the silence in your chest, and the moral rut clinging to every decision the characters make. That's what sets it apart. Let's really dig in. Compare it again to The Walking Dead, which had such a strong start and slowly transformed into a soap opera with zombies. That show threw characters at the wall like spaghetti to see what would stick. Major deaths became a gimmick. Emotional arcs got lost in an endless rinse-and-repeat cycle of new camp, new threat, betrayal, escape. Meanwhile, The Last of Us takes its time. It gives you 2 leads and builds the story like a fire in winter, slow, patient, deliberate. Every choice Joel and Ellie make carries the weight of their shared trauma. There are no filler arcs, no side quests. Just raw survival and the heartbreaking need for human connection in a world where everything good seems to be dead. Now look at Station 11, another standout in the genre, more poetic and meditative in its exploration of loss, art, and memory. That show had elegance and intelligence, but The Last of Us goes darker, rougher, and often deeper emotionally. Where Station 11 was a dreamlike reflection on the past, The Last of Us is a bloody, bruised march into the present. It doesn't float, it trudges. It doesn't offer relief, it tests your emotional stamina. And yet, both shows manage to make you cry for the same reason. They remember that people, not plot, are the heart of the apocalypse. Even the road, often held up as the ultimate grim post-apocalyptic tale, feels like a spiritual cousin. The sparse dialogue, the gray morality, the father figure doing unspeakable things for love. Yes, those threads run deep in The Last of Us. But the show takes that intensity and stretches it over multiple episodes. It lets the dread pile up. It lets the hope breathe, just long enough to feel dangerous. And then it yanks it away. You're not just watching Joel and Ellie's journey, you're feeling every slow mile they walk, every word they don't say, every bullet they have to fire just to stay alive. Then there's I Am Legend, which gave us a solitary survivor and a dog, emotional gut punches, and a haunting sense of loneliness. But it ultimately leaned hard on its blockbuster instincts. The Last of Us doesn't do that. It rejects spectacle. When there's action, it's swift and brutal, not choreographed to impress. It's messy, desperate, and terrifying. When there's quiet, it's aching. The show doesn't care if you're entertained. It cares if you understand these characters, if you're changed by them. What about comparisons within the same creative DNA? Look at other HBO drama juggernauts. Game of Thrones, at its best, gave us character-driven plots full of betrayal and complexity, but it eventually collapsed under its own scale. The Last of Us never lets the world get too big. Its scale is emotional, not geographical. The apocalypse is just a backdrop. What we're really watching is a meditation on grief, fatherhood, guilt, forgiveness, and whether it's even possible to do the right thing when everything has gone wrong. It's intimate horror. Not just the horror of monsters, but the horror of becoming one yourself. Even in the realm of video game adaptations, the show doesn't just shine, it obliterates expectations. For decades, this genre was cursed, either stripped of depth, Resident Evil *, flattened into cliches, *Assassin's Creed *, or just turned into incoherent noise, *Max Payne *. The Last of Us is the first time many viewers probably watched a video game adaptation and thought, this could win Emmys. And it did, rightfully, because it respected the story enough to preserve its soul and then expanded it with artistry and care. You don't feel like you're watching a game, you feel like you're witnessing a modern myth unfold. In terms of innovation, The Last of Us doesn't reinvent the genre's architecture, but it rewires the emotional foundation. It's like using old instruments to play a new kind of symphony. There are familiar sights, barren cities, clickers, betrayals, guns, but the rhythm is different. It pulses with humanity. It haunts you with choices. It drowns you in silence, and then hits you with dialogue that feels like a punch to the throat. It's less about what happens, and more about what hurts. So when you stack it up next to its genre cousins, its video game relatives, and its dramatic predecessors, The Last of Us doesn't just hold its own. It creates a new category. One where apocalypse isn't about survival. It's about feeling. And that's what makes it unforgettable. Not because it reinvents the wheel, but because it teaches the wheel how to bleed. Let's dive even deeper, because The Last of Us doesn't stop at surface-level symbolism or throwaway metaphors. It doubles down. This is a series that hides entire emotional landscapes in the background of scenes, in character choices that seem small but ripple throughout the entire story. When you start peeling back the layers, it becomes clear that almost everything in this show is a symbol for something greater, and these metaphors don't just support the story, they are the story. Let's go back to the idea of cordyceps not just being a parasitic fungus, but a full-blown allegory for emotional numbness and psychological stagnation. The infected are frozen in time. Their screams, their gestures, even the grotesque way they grow into walls and floors, they're trapped. The idea that grief can turn you into something unrecognizable is hammered home through the imagery of bodies overtaken by nature, as if trauma itself rewires people into something inhuman. The longer they're infected, the less of them is left. Now compare that to Joel. Emotionally infected. Numb. Surviving, not living. It's not just smart, it's surgical storytelling through metaphor. But let's level up to another recurring symbol, broken watches. Joel's watch, stopped forever at the moment of his daughter's death, becomes a ticking metaphor for arrested development. That moment defines him. He doesn't fix the watch because emotionally, he hasn't moved a second past Sarah's death. It's frozen, and so is he, until Ellie comes into his life. She doesn't rewind the watch, but she starts him ticking again in a different way. She becomes the new heartbeat of his life, and that watch transforms from a symbol of grief to a symbol of reluctant hope. There's a brilliant use of mirrors and reflections too. Notice how often characters look into mirrors, puddles, or windows, seeing a version of themselves that they either don't recognize or don't want to acknowledge. Ellie stares into her reflection after traumatic moments, almost daring herself to see the person she's becoming. Joel avoids looking inward, literally and metaphorically. Every reflection in this series is like a silent confrontation with truth. The mirror isn't there for aesthetics, it's a thematic slap in the face. Now take a look at fire and light. Fire often represents destruction in fiction, but here it's complicated. Fire is warmth, yes. Think of Ellie and Joel huddled by it in the snow, but also danger, chaos, and transformation. The fire that burns everything down can also be the spark that forges something new. Fire is used sparingly in the series, but when it shows up, it's dramatic. It represents irreversible change. A life taken, a truth revealed, a path crossed that cannot be undone. And then there's water. Water appears constantly, flowing under bridges, trickling through ruins, crashing against dams. And just like classic literary metaphors, it represents rebirth, danger, and transition. Anytime a major shift happens in the story, water is nearby. Crossing a river, falling into a lake, standing in the rain. Water becomes the emotional punctuation mark for transformation. It's not a coincidence, it's meticulous visual language. Let's talk about silence. Yep, silence itself is symbolic. Not just an absence of sound, but a thematic choice. Some of the most gut-wrenching scenes in The Last of Us are drenched in silence, moments where music fades and all you hear is breathing, footsteps, wind. Silence is used to create discomfort, yes, but also reflection. It's where the characters, and the audience, are forced to feel everything at once. In a world so full of chaos and noise, silence is a metaphor for clarity, or sometimes for dread. It's a character in its own right. There's also a ton of visual repetition as metaphor. The way characters are framed in doorways, like thresholds between who they were and who they're becoming. The way certain camera angles mirror past scenes as if to say, this is happening again but differently. The way Ellie is framed alone in wide shots, small in a giant, broken world, makes her survival, and her hope, all the more symbolic. The environment is never just background. It's a mood ring. It reflects the internal state of the characters, and you can read it like a poetic code. And let's not forget the more subtle metaphors, like music. Joel's guitar isn't just a skill or hobby. It's a piece of his humanity, a thread to his daughter, a way to connect when words fail. So when he promises to teach Ellie to play, that's not just a bonding moment. It's a symbolic gesture of trust, of rebuilding. That guitar is a metaphor for memory, for legacy, for love that can't be spoken aloud. Even food, yes, food, is rich with symbolic value. Characters break bread, share meals, and occasionally fight over scraps. But whenever someone prepares food or offers it, it's a gesture of humanity. In a world where survival strips people of their kindness, moments of shared meals are powerful metaphors for trust and connection. Ellie eating with David's group becomes a horrifying twist on this idea. The food becomes symbolic of deception, of the fine line between survival and savagery. And what about names? The show rarely throws out names casually. Sarah, for instance, biblical, loaded with emotional gravity. Ellie, short, sharp, unique, just like her. Even the fireflies, that rebel group name, isn't random. Fireflies are creatures of the night, carriers of light. But they're also fleeting, brief bursts of hope in the dark. Just like the rebels themselves, their name is a metaphor for their mission and their fate. So yes, the symbolic and metaphorical density of The Last of Us is on another level. It's the kind of story where every detail, every glance, every motif has a second meaning hiding just under the surface. The writers and directors clearly didn't just want to tell a compelling post-apocalyptic tale, they wanted to craft a layered, meaningful experience that rewards repeat viewings and deep reflection. It's not just that these metaphors exist. It's that they live and breathe inside the narrative. They shape the way we see the characters, the world, and even ourselves. Alright, let's really sink our teeth into the franchise and historical context of The Last of Us, because this isn't just any adaptation. It's a massive cultural moment that bridges gaming, television, and storytelling history in a way few projects ever manage to pull off. To truly appreciate the show, you've got to understand the immense legacy it's carrying on its back and the ways it's reshaping that legacy for new audiences and old fans alike. Starting with the franchise itself, The Last of Us originated as a video game released in 2013 by Naughty Dog and quickly became one of the most acclaimed titles ever made, thanks to its cinematic storytelling, emotional depth, and complex characters. It wasn't just another post-apocalyptic shooter. It was a story about love, loss, survival, and the messy humanity in between. Fans didn't just play it, they lived it. The game was groundbreaking for treating its characters like real people instead of typical action heroes. So when HBO announced a series adaptation, the stakes were sky high. Fans wanted faithfulness, but also freshness, something that honored the source but could stand proudly on its own 2 feet. The show's creators, led by Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann, the latter being the original game's writer and creative director, faced a unique challenge: how to translate an interactive experience into a passive viewing one without losing that emotional punch. This isn't just a remake, it's a reimagining and expansion. The pacing changes, new characters are introduced, and certain events are deepened or rearranged to fit a serialized storytelling format. For example, scenes that were brief or implied in the game get room to breathe here, fleshing out motivations and relationships that felt more compressed in the gameplay. It's a smart way to reward longtime fans with richer context while still making the story accessible and gripping for newcomers. When looking at it from the franchise angle, this series also sets a new benchmark for video game adaptations on screen. Historically, video game to movie or TV adaptations have had a rough reputation, often criticized for shallow storytelling, poor casting, or disrespect for the source material. The Last of Us shatters that mold by showing how to do it right, with respect, detail, and an eye for the emotional core. It's now a textbook example for how to bridge mediums and satisfy diverse audiences who care deeply about the story's legacy. On the historical front, thinking about the world building as its own kind of alternate history, the show nails a hauntingly plausible timeline of societal collapse. Unlike some post-apocalyptic tales that leap immediately into chaos, The Last of Us painstakingly shows the slow decay of the modern world as a pandemic ravages humanity. You see hints of government breakdown, panic, rationing, martial law, and the rise of militant factions, all played out in news clips, radio transmissions, and subtle environmental storytelling. This meticulous approach creates a fully immersive setting that feels lived in and authentic. It's a dystopia grounded in realism, echoing actual social fears and global crises we've experienced. What's more, the show's depiction of the pandemic and its aftermath has a striking resonance with contemporary real-world events. The echoes of COVID-19's impact, quarantine zones, resource scarcity, social isolation, are unmistakable. This timing makes the story feel immediate and emotionally charged in a way that goes beyond fiction. It taps into collective anxieties and resilience, turning a fictional apocalypse into a reflection of our own world's fragility and strength. This cultural relevance adds a fascinating layer to its historical context, making it both a piece of entertainment and a cultural commentary. Within the broader landscape of post-apocalyptic media, The Last of Us brings something fresh to the table by focusing less on grand spectacle and more on intimate human stories. Compared to other franchises like The Walking Dead or Mad Max, which often emphasize action and survivalist grit, this series zooms in on relationships, trauma, and moral ambiguity. That's a huge reason why it stands out and connects with viewers on a deeper level. It's not just about zombies or survival, it's about what makes us human when the world falls apart. Plus, when you consider the show in the context of Neil Druckmann's own body of work, it fits perfectly as a continuation of a storytelling evolution. Known for blending emotionally charged narratives with ethical complexity, Druckmann's vision has matured and expanded here, taking advantage of TV's longer format to explore themes only hinted at in the games. This makes the series not just a franchise extension, but a significant artistic milestone. Overall, the franchise and historical context of The Last of Us is a rich, multi-layered story about adaptation, evolution, and resonance. It respects its origins while embracing new storytelling opportunities, all wrapped in a setting that's grounded in real-world fears and hopes. Watching the series becomes more than just enjoying a post-apocalyptic drama. It's witnessing a cultural phenomenon that bridges mediums, generations, and emotional landscapes in a way few stories ever do. Let's talk about the big numbers behind The Last of Us TV series, because in the world of entertainment, budgets and earnings often tell a story just as dramatic as what's on screen. Although it's a TV show and not a film, its production scale and financial footprint are huge enough to rival blockbuster movies, so understanding how the budget shaped what we got to see and how the audience responded financially adds an exciting layer to the whole experience. Starting with the budget, The Last of Us came with a seriously hefty price tag. HBO didn't hold back in making this one of their flagship projects. The numbers reportedly soared into the hundreds of millions over the course of the first season alone. That's money well spent on top-tier production values, from stunning set designs and authentic post-apocalyptic environments to cutting-edge visual effects and high-caliber casting. The lavish budget meant the creators could build that gritty, immersive world the game fans craved, without cutting corners on the details that make the story so believable and emotionally compelling. What really stands out is how the budget translated directly into production quality. When you watch the series, the richness of the environments, the nuanced performances, and the seamless integration of CGI with practical effects all scream top-dollar investment. You can see the resources funneled into creating believable quarantine zones, decayed cities overtaken by nature, and realistic creature designs that bring the infected to life with terrifying authenticity. The camera work and lighting also benefit from the budget, creating an atmospheric tone that's haunting and cinematic, elevating the storytelling to feel like a premium movie experience stretched across episodes. Now, onto the financial success. While traditional box office numbers don't apply here since this is a streaming series, we can look at viewership stats, subscriber boosts, and critical reception as measures of how well the investment paid off. The Last of Us smashed expectations, becoming one of HBO's most-watched shows in recent years, attracting millions of viewers worldwide. Its release sparked conversations across social media, drove subscriptions to HBO Max, and generated buzz that translated into sustained interest for the entire season. In other words, it didn't just rake in viewers initially, it kept them hooked episode after episode, which is a golden ticket for any streaming service. Marketing played a huge role too. The campaign cleverly targeted both die-hard fans of the game and new viewers curious about the story. Trailers highlighted emotional depth and thrilling action, striking a perfect balance to draw diverse audiences. The timing of releases and strategic teasers built up anticipation without giving too much away, creating a buzz that felt organic rather than forced. This smart marketing amplified the show's reach, pulling in viewers who might not normally watch post-apocalyptic dramas. Audience reception was overwhelmingly positive, which naturally boosted the show's profile and encouraged word-of-mouth promotion. When fans feel the money spent is reflected in quality storytelling and production, they're more likely to stick around, binge, and recommend it to others. Plus, strong critical acclaim helped position the series as a must-watch, which also supports long-term financial success through awards buzz and ongoing subscriptions. Of course, such a big budget always brings high expectations and pressure. If the show had faltered, or if audiences hadn't connected emotionally, it could have been labeled a costly misstep. But in this case, the impressive production quality, combined with strong viewership and critical praise, suggests that the budget was not just a number, but a vital ingredient in crafting a hit series. It's a textbook example of how investing in quality can pay off in both artistic and financial terms, turning The Last of Us from a beloved game into a landmark television event. When it comes to watching The Last of Us, the experience is designed to be as immersive and accessible as possible, fitting perfectly into the way most of us consume high-quality entertainment these days. Unlike a traditional theatrical release, this series has found its home primarily on streaming platforms, which actually suits its detailed, slow-burn storytelling style perfectly. So where exactly can you dive into this post-apocalyptic journey? Let's break it down and get you set up for the best possible viewing adventure. First up, the obvious destination for The Last of Us is HBO and HBO Max. The show is an HBO original series, which means if you want to watch it legally and in the highest quality, you're going to want access to this platform. HBO Max offers the full season in crisp HD or even 4K on supported devices, making it the ideal choice for viewers who want to catch every subtle visual detail, from the decay of deserted cities to the nuanced expressions of the characters. The streaming service also lets you binge watch at your own pace or savor each episode slowly, which is perfect given the show's emotional depth and intricate storytelling. One of the perks of streaming is that you can watch it on nearly any device you own, a smart TV, tablet, phone, or computer, meaning the experience is pretty flexible. However, for maximum impact, watching on a large screen with good sound is recommended. This show's atmosphere thrives on its haunting sound design and immersive visuals, so a living room setup with a big TV and decent speakers or headphones can turn your home into your own little quarantine zone where you really feel the tension and emotion. If you don't already subscribe to HBO Max, there are often options to access the show through bundled streaming packages, depending on your region or cable provider. Some viewers might also find it available for digital purchase or rental on platforms like Amazon Prime Video, Apple TV, or Google Play after its initial streaming window, though this varies by territory and timing. Buying digitally lets you own the episodes and watch offline, which is handy for travel or those without constant internet access. It's worth noting that The Last of Us is not a theatrical release, so you won't find it playing in cinemas. This is one of those shows where the intimacy of home viewing actually enhances the experience. Watching alone or with a close friend or family member lets you really connect with the characters' emotional journeys without distractions. Plus, you can pause, rewind, or rewatch key moments to catch details you might have missed the first time, something impossible in a theater. One interesting thing about the streaming format is how it opens up opportunities for community engagement. Many fans enjoy watching episodes live when they're released, then jumping online to discuss theories, favorite scenes, and character arcs. This creates a shared experience, even though everyone might be watching from their own couch. So if you want to get the fullest impact, syncing up with release schedules and joining fan conversations can add a social layer to your viewing that feels energizing and immersive. In summary, if you want to experience The Last of Us in all its gritty, emotional glory, HBO Max is your go-to platform, ideally on a large screen with quality sound. Streaming lets you dive into this rich world at your own pace, making it perfect for the detailed, character-driven storytelling the show delivers. Whether you're a longtime fan of the game or new to the story entirely, the accessibility and quality options available make watching the series an engaging and unforgettable event.